The clinic was quiet, bathed in soft morning light streaming through the window, creating a space that was both warm and professional. Standing at her desk, Hanh Linh took a deep breath, her eyes tracing the stacks of patient files piled neatly before her. 2 exhausting weeks of caring for her younger brother in the hospital had just ended. Though she had returned to her usual routine, the lingering tension clung to her like a shadow. The appointment list stretched across several pages, each line detailing a patient's name, schedule, consultation type, and critical notes. Her eyes paused at a familiar name, Tran Huc. Among dozens of appointments, he stood out like a single bright pulse among steady rhythms, making her heart flutter with a mix of anticipation and curiosity. Her morning began with a demanding patient, a middle-aged woman burdened by work and family pressures. She entered the room tense, her voice sharp, movements restless. Hanh Linh calmly observed her eyes, posture, restless fingers, each revealing layers of hidden anxiety. With open-ended questions and reflective techniques, Lin gently guided the conversation. After half an hour, the woman finally softened, beginning to reveal long-buried pressures. Lin took careful notes, analyzing while maintaining trust, preparing herself for the upcoming sessions, especially Tran Huc. Right on time, Tran Huc stepped into the room. Dressed in a gray shirt, composed as always, his expression was calm yet unreadable. Hanh Linh gave him a gentle, steady smile. "Good morning. How are you feeling today?" He sat down, still reserved and meticulous, but there was a subtle openness in his demeanor. He didn't avoid her gaze, his hands rested on the table more naturally. Beneath his composed exterior, a quiet trust was beginning to take shape. Their conversation unfolded around daily stresses, work pressure, loneliness, loss, responsibility. Hanh Linh listened closely, analyzing every nuance, his breathing, his eyes, the faint movements of his hands, and the silences between his words. He emphasized independence and self-reliance, yet his eyes carried a faint trace of emptiness, loneliness long concealed. With gentle precision, Lin guided him, encouraging expression without pressure. Mid-session, an urgent call came from the clinic. Another patient had shown alarming symptoms. Lin excused herself quickly, sending a message to her assistant. "Monitor and handle the case before the next appointment. Keep Tran Huc's space unchanged." He looked at her, surprised, but silent. A brief pause hung in the air, taut yet strangely intimate, their heartbeats quickening ever so slightly, as if some invisible signal between them had grown stronger. When Lin returned, she offered a calm smile. "Sorry for the interruption. Let's continue. I want to understand more about the pressures and loneliness you've been carrying." Tran Huc nodded, his deep voice steady. "I trust you." A simple sentence, yet filled with unexpected sincerity. It marked a shift in their relationship. His eyes softened, his defenses lowered, though he still carried the reserved maturity that defined him. The session continued with measured tension and psychological depth. Lin navigated him through topics of betrayal, isolation, work strain, carefully adjusting her pace, helping him open up, while preserving his sense of control. As the meeting neared its end, she took detailed notes and laid out her plans. Closely observe his emotional responses. Identify priority topics for the next session. Maintain a delicate balance between professionalism and emotional trust. He stood, his gaze lingering on her for a moment, familiar yet strangely new. A subtle connection pulsed between them, a silent acknowledgement, neither dared to voice. As she prepared for her next patient, Hanh Linh closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Her heart still raced, a blend of tension, excitement, and something she couldn't name. The appointment list remained long, the responsibilities endless, but she was ready for the challenges ahead, both in the clinic and in the unseen world where every decision required sharp instincts, calm focus, and careful calculation. After nearly 3 years of operation, the antique appraisal and gemstone crafting company founded by Hanh Linh had grown far beyond expectations. What began as a small workshop, with only a few workers, had now become a nationally recognized brand trusted by collectors, auction houses, and even major museums. The interesting part was no one knew she was the true mastermind behind it all. Outwardly, the name Heart and Gem was only associated with a talented CEO who frequently appeared at events, yet never once revealed the identity of the real owner. As for Hanh Linh, she chose a quiet, simple life, managing everything discreetly from behind the scenes through an online system. After years of intense work, her company had expanded into 3 major cities and even collaborated with international experts. Their handcrafted gemstone products were highly sought after by the elite, especially their line of artisanal feng shui jewelry, so exquisite that people called them the breath of the earth. But the greatest joy for Hanh Linh wasn't fame or profit. It was the feeling of growing a little more each day and being able to provide a prosperous life for her family. She bought a villa in the heart of the city filled with sunlight and greenery. Then she brought her parents and younger brother from their hometown to live with her. In the mornings, the house was full of warm chatter over breakfast. In the evenings, she sat on the veranda, watching the city lights shimmer through her teacup, her heart at peace. At 25, she already possessed a remarkable fortune, nearly 10 rental apartments, a small seaside villa, savings enough to make even wealthy heiresses envious, and a loyal, highly capable team. Yet she never became complacent. On the contrary, she kept planning ahead. She discussed with her assistant about expanding to international markets, beginning with short-term courses in Europe. Studying abroad would broaden her knowledge, expose her to modern appraisal techniques, and help her build connections with global experts. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Tran Huc was still Tran Huc, but no longer as calm as before. His family's corporation continued to thrive, with profits rising every year, yet his inner world was anything but steady. Despite his busy schedule, the image of a certain gentle girl kept appearing in his mind, the clear eyes, the warm smile whenever he unconsciously glanced out the window. He knew she was doing well, thriving even. And that alone made him uneasy. Uneasy because she was becoming more radiant, more talented, more independent. Uneasy because he feared someone else might appear, take her hand in a crowded street, laugh with her the way he once dreamed of. Sometimes during meetings, while his assistants presented reports, he found himself staring absent-mindedly at his laptop screen, its wallpaper still the photo he secretly took in the back garden of the clinic, where she once stood in the sunlight, the breeze gently lifting her long hair, her smile soft like morning dew. The more he missed her, the less he could forget. The more he tried to bury those feelings, the deeper they carved into him. Tran Huc had always been rational, a man who controlled everything: work, emotions, life. Yet, when it came to Hanh Linh, every principle he lived by fell apart. He once believed that distance and time would naturally fade his feelings. But 3 years later, every time someone mentioned her name, his heart tightened as if just yesterday she had been sitting in front of him, listening intently to his stories in that tiny counseling room. More than once he had asked himself, how is she now? Does she have someone beside her? The mere thought of her smiling at another man felt like a thorn twisting in his chest. But he never reached out, not because he didn't want to, but because he feared that if they met again, she might no longer be the girl who once listened to him so earnestly. Hanh Linh continued living peacefully in her own world, steadily building her career, caring for her family, preparing for her future. And Tran Huc was slowly realizing that all the power, wealth, and prestige he possessed meant nothing if they existed without her. That day she had just signed an important contract with a partner from Singapore when her phone rang. Her mother's gentle voice came through, tinged with unmistakable excitement. My darling, are you free this weekend? I've arranged for you to meet someone. A friend of the family. He has a son who's a doctor, kind, well-mannered, very decent. Just meet him once, all right? Hanh Linh froze for a second, the pen in her hand suspended mid-air. She smiled, trying to reassure her mother. Yes, Mom. Go ahead and arrange it. I'll come home. She didn't think much of it, simply assumed it was a friendly meal between 2 families. But someone else didn't think so lightly. Tran Huc, for example. Ever since finishing his treatment at her clinic, he had kept finding excuses to see her again. Sometimes it was about gemstone appraisal, sometimes it was to give a thank you gift, and sometimes simply because he happened to be passing by. He never said anything explicit, but in his eyes, there was always something hidden, a thin thread connecting their past and present. But in recent days, he could feel the distance growing. She no longer replied to his messages as quickly. Her schedule was packed. And when they met, her gaze was calm, so calm it made him feel like he was just someone she used to know. That evening Tran Huc drove to a high-end restaurant, one he happened to learn was where Hanh Linh would dine with her family and her blind date. He wasn't sure why he went. Maybe curiosity, maybe the rising unease that had been gnawing at him day after day. Through the glass window he saw her sitting at a table in the center, warm yellow lights casting a soft glow on her gentle features. Beside her sat a young man, tall, composed, his gaze filled with respect whenever he looked at her. They talked comfortably. Occasionally she lowered her head slightly, gently turning her teacup, an expression of quiet grace that Tran Huc had once seen. But now she showed it to someone else. At that moment his chest tightened. He knew this wasn't ordinary jealousy. It felt like someone was crushing the air out of his lungs, cold and burning at the same time. His lips pressed together as he stared at her through the glass, unable to look away even for a second. Who is he? The voice in his mind growled. A doctor. A gentleman who can make her smile like that. The coffee he held slowly went cold. Memories flooded back, her soft voice reminding him to sleep early, the afternoons he came in for a checkup, and she smiled at the results, the times she tilted her head, listening to him talk, her eyes shining. Now all of that no longer belonged to him. He slipped his hands into his pockets, lifting his gaze to the glowing lights above, his eyes heavy. In that moment, Tran Huc realized something he had never dared to admit: he was in love with her. Not curiosity, not gratitude, not emotional depth, but real love, quiet, deep, unwavering. Yet now he was late. Inside, Hanh Linh continued chatting pleasantly, though her eyes occasionally flickered, as if sensing someone watching her. She didn't know that just beyond that glass wall, a man was standing still, trapped in his own emotions. The man sitting across from her was Lam Du, general surgeon, and a friend of her family. He was measured, knowledgeable, with just the right amount of humor. She felt comfortable, but no particular spark. Miss Hanh Linh, I heard from your mother that you're very busy, yet you still took the time to meet me. I feel honored. I was forced into it, really, she said with a light laugh. A casual remark for her. But for the man outside Tran Huc, it made his fists clench tight. His lips thinned, his gaze darkened. Forced. If it were me, I'd never let someone meet me out of obligation, he thought bitterly. When Hanh Linh stood up to leave, he instinctively stepped aside and quietly followed her. Her footsteps were soft, her voice gentle, as she spoke to her mother on the phone. He didn't know what he was doing, only that if he let her walk away without saying anything, he would regret it for the rest of his life. But before he could call out, his phone rang. His mother. Her voice was urgent, mixed with joy and surprise. Huc, where are you? I heard you have a girlfriend now. The whole family is thrilled. Why didn't you tell us sooner? He froze. The rumor had reached his mother thanks to none other than his older brother's ex-wife, who had accidentally witnessed his previous meeting with Hanh Linh. In their eyes, the way he looked at her, the way they acted, it was obvious enough to cause misunderstandings. He didn't respond right away. He closed his eyes briefly, breathing deeply. Mom. I'll explain later. I'm busy right now. He hung up and looked in the direction she had walked, but she had already disappeared behind the corner. That night, the city lights shone brilliantly, yet inside Tran Huc's heart, everything was a dull gray. He drove aimlessly through familiar streets, each one tied to a memory of her: the small clinic, the cafe corner where she used to write reports, the road where he once drove her to a seminar. Each memory replaying slowly like film scenes, slicing into his heart. On his desk at home lay the antique pocket watch he once asked her to appraise. Every time he saw it, he remembered her calm eyes as she said, "Objects have souls." Only those patient enough can understand them. Now he understood. It wasn't just objects that had souls. She did. He knew he no longer had the right to step into her world. But how was he supposed to stop thinking about her? How was he supposed to silence the ache of seeing her with someone else? Gripping the steering wheel, a bitter smile flickered across his lips. Hanh Linh. Do you know? I once thought I'd never fall for anyone again. But then you appeared like a blade, so gentle it doesn't hurt at first, but sinks deeper and deeper.